Hey guys, what is going on? Chris here with Shughead Gaming, bringing you my review for Skyworld, developed by Vertigo Games and Wolfdog Interactive. And while this is currently available on various PC VR platforms, this review will of course be on the PSVR version and reviewed on the PS4 Pro. Skyworld released on PSVR March 26, 2019 for an estimated price of $25. Of course, that depends on your region. Claim command over the VR battlefield. Skyworld puts you at the helm of a kingdom at war in VR. Put the power of your own full army at your fingertips. Conquer all Skyworlds in a royal campaign, and wage war against friends online. Taking aspects of both card battling, turn-based strategy, and real-time strategy games, do the creators of Arizona Sunshine have the recipe right on this interesting mix? Let's find out. Guys, if you like this video, please hit that like button, and if you would like to see more PSVR content from me, please consider subscribing. Also, if you want more PSVR news and info, check Shughead Gaming out on Facebook and Twitter. As always, let's kick things off with a look at graphics. Coming from a veteran VR studio like Vertigo Games, I had high hopes for a polished follow-up to Arizona Sunshine, and I'm pleased to say I wasn't disappointed. Skyworld is cartoony to be sure, and not the visual masterpiece of the stunning Tethered, an earlier PSVR RTS game, but still debuts on PSVR super polished and with a visual style all its own. Textures are a bit on the simpler side and the lighting effects are at a minimum, but when taken as a whole, Skyworld begins to grow on you as you become engrossed in its massive tabletop sandbox that spins and evolves as it changes from an RTS tabletop map to a turn-based card battle playing field. The card battle maps are particularly fun to be in as they often visually come across as a 3D version of Castle Storm. Character animations on the battlefield were competent enough and gave me a clear idea what was happening in a given altercation, giving me the info I needed, such as if attacks were getting through a swordsman's shields and if my attackers were even fast enough to compete one-on-one. Like I said, Skyworld's aesthetic is cartoon-based to be sure, and it will never be mistaken for the likes of something like the Total War series, but it's hard not to get caught up in its fun and polished take to this mix of genres and packaging them all in a very cool dynamic tabletop VR world. Sound is up next.
We have lost a tower. Not enough mana. An enemy tower has been destroyed.
No fair.
The amount of workers is dwindling, sire.
The soundscape of Skyworld continues the game's trend of bringing genres together. As a tabletop experience, the game world doesn't bristle with sounds. As much of your time in the tabletop setting is spent deliberating on moves and managing the game's resource mechanic, I was actually perfectly happy to just listen to tips from the Overseer and sit back and enjoy the soundtrack. The music here is actually nicely done, varying between maps as well as in and out of your combat, and often coming off like something we might have heard in Skyrim. Like I said, the silence of tabletop, but with the epicness of an RTS game, and one especially set in a fantasy world. However, silence goes out the window when jumping into combat. All your various military units sound appropriate to what they are, and like the character animations aren't anything special, but definitely do their job and never annoy. Finally, voice work here and the additional sound effects are both done well and help to bring together this fun, animated, genre-bending romp. And that brings us to gameplay. As I've already made pretty clear by now, Skyworld is a mixtape of strategy genres with the core foundation of the game playing out on a giant 3D tabletop. It is here that missions play out in a turn-based style of play. The primary idea behind any mission is to defend your castle and grow your kingdom either clockwise or counterclockwise around the map. Objectives will be added to change up the flavor and keep things interesting, but the primary premise is the same. Movement is grid-based, limiting each player only so much freedom based on each turn and what area of the map they currently control. Resources mining and management of them is a key mechanic here on the tabletop portion of the game, and the key to your overall success. First stop is the throne room. It is here that you will manage taxes on your kingdom to grow your gold stores as well as control the flow of food. Balancing these two key resources controls your kingdom's overall happiness and is key in giving you more workers to allocate to various resource mining activities, and not as simple as you might think. Food fuels the workforce, but sometimes food stores need to be cut if the supply dries up, so lowering taxes might be required and vice versa. This balancing act is key and plays into everything else you do. Back to the main map, highlighted general resource mining locations will be visible but only accessible to build if they are within a claimed region of the map. Turn after turn, you will expand your empire, making decisions on what resource structures to build, when and where to build them, and how many workers you should allocate to increase production at each resource point. Certain highlighted areas indicate a higher production output of a given resource, so strategy can be key here too. Expanding your empire requires you to destroy enemy structures and build your own light towers to claim these lands as your own, but always keep in mind that building up and defending these towers, as well as your main castle, must also be top of mind. Resource mining and expanding the empire turn after turn at first seemed rather simple, but all too quickly I realized the chess match later levels would bring, as additional elements are thrown into the mix, making for some tough decisions. One of these key elements obviously comes in the form of an enemy general, or two, that will also be expanding their place on the map with the intent to end you. Come face to face with one and a battle is announced to commence at the end of your current round. It is here that your hard-earned resources will go towards the war effort as you head to the laboratory to research new combat units in the form of playing cards ranging from ranged attackers, infantry swordsmen, menacing knights, flying airships, and many more. You can even conjure up some magic of your own to literally hurl at enemy units when in combat. Next stop is the blacksmith to level up your card stats to ensure victory on the battlefield. All of these take resources, and after a few successful, or in my case, disastrous battles, you will begin to learn quickly what strategies you might use to better upgrade your units, and ultimately what resources you need more of. Hence the balancing act I mentioned, and the birth of your new video game addiction. Flipping the game board over and into combat brings in another type of strategy altogether, foregoing the turn-based gameplay on the tabletop map for a more intense real-time strategy and tower defense approach. Back on the tabletop side, you will have created your custom deck of cards, but it is here that you will put them to use. Each level brings with it different battlefields, all with their own strategies. Not explained well in the tutorial, you will see key areas along the neutral zone marked with circular areas. These are switch pads, if you will, giving the last team to have a unit walk over them the advantage of air support above. These can be switched back and forth, so managing these is key and something I learned the hard way. Combat seems simple at first. Playing a card from your deck uses up mana, which slowly regenerates as you play. As you would imagine, different cards have different mana requirements, so balancing this and the shuffle of the deck is key. Pick a path and lay down a card, sending the unit on its way. Every unit will ultimately attempt to destroy the enemy's base, and there's yours, with only gunner towers and your units to stop them. Like I said, seems simple. And it is, comparatively to some of the big boy RTS games out there, but writing this off as just another mindless crap fest like the League of War VR game would be incredibly unfair, for there is a lot of strategy and nuance under the surface as you really begin to realize the importance of deck makeup, unit upgrades, map placement, timing, and of course, what units attack what units and to what effectiveness. This in itself becomes an entire game in of itself, and very likely why a standalone version is headed to PC in only a few weeks' time. What I loved about this RTS mechanic and really hooked me was how everything on the tabletop side of things, even with its own objectives and challenges, directly played into my war effort in the battlefield. Like I said, simple at first glance, but difficult to master and really addicting. The campaign will take you anywhere from 8 to 12 hours and consists of 8 levels, all tied together by a light narrative, but bringing with it enough new ideas, playing cards, and objectives to really keep you engaged. All these levels can be replayed and at a higher difficulty, as well as jumping into a skirmish mode for even more variety. Score chasers can head to the online leaderboards, where your XP level is globally tracked. Outside of the single player content is a 1v1 online mode with an available 10 maps to choose from. Needless to say, going online is a totally different game and a ton of fun, as human players aren't likely to sit back like the AI as you mine resources for a few rounds. Skyworld is controlled perfectly with 2-move controllers, really delivering a game that feels designed for VR from the ground up. From the customizable info panels in the tabletop arena to the rotating game board complete with manual height and distance options, just announces itself as a VR game that knows how to be a VR game. Pointing, pulling, clicking, and even throwing cards across the board all felt perfect and made Skyworld a joy to play. Skyworld can be played either seated or standing, with seated probably most likely. A limited amount of room is required and motion sickness should not be an issue here. And finally, that brings us to fun factor and my final review. Everything from its graphics to its initial gameplay impressions made Skyworld feel like I was going to be bored from the word go. I have been looking for a VR game to scratch the same itch Corix did back in PSVR year 1, but I honestly didn't expect this game to be it. Fortunately, I was very wrong, as Skyworld, with its polished gameplay mechanics and ingenious genre blend, quickly got its hooks in me and turned into my new VR obsession. I rate games based on a scale of buy, wait for sale, or burn it to the ground. This is an absolute buy for fans of RTS, tower defense, or tabletop games. The price for the content value here is incredible, with a meaty campaign, skirmish mode, and online multiplayer. This is a game to get if it piques your interest in the slightest. Anyways guys, that's it for me. If you'd like this video, please hit that like button, and if you'd like to see more PSVR content from me, please consider subscribing. And for video updates, hit that bell icon. I'll catch you guys on my next video.